Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Vedanta Garwal. Our top focus this morning is the situation in the northeastern state of Manipur. Fresh clashes have been reported in Manipur and 5 people, including a policeman, have been killed and 12 injured. This after fresh violence erupted. And this, remember, instances of firing on civilians by militant groups have been reported since yesterday. In fact, yesterday, remember, Chief Minister Biren Singh had said that 40 terrorists were shot down. Now, in Imphal, remember, security has been ramped up. Additional forces were also rushed to the northeastern state of Manipur. All this comes just ahead of Union Home Minister Amit Shah's crucial visit to the northeastern state of Manipur, and overnight in several areas of the state, including state capital Imphal, security was ramped up because people came out on the streets defying curfew. Remember, internet has been shut down in Manipur and curfew was extended as well. In fact, security forces had to use tear gas and blank firing. This is what sources have told NDTV. Now, this particular incident of fresh firing and 5 people being killed comes just a day after Chief Minister Biren Singh said that 40 people, 40 terrorists, I beg your pardon, were gunned down in the northeastern state. Now, Union Home Minister is slated to visit Manipur today till the 1st of June. Now, this is the centre's attempt to broker peace between various ethnic groups in Manipur. Manipur has been witnessing ethnic clashes since the time, ethnic groups opposed the ST status for the Mai Tai community in the northeastern state.
No, just mass combing operations along with the helicopter surveillance has started, and we are trying to find out the culprits, those militants who are attacking the civilians.
Yesterday, even this morning, in all the peripheral areas of the hill districts and the Imphal Valley, there is firing going on. And one thing I'm really pained to witness is these state forces, the commandos per se here, have been using mortar bombs and 2-inch mortars, and including snipers.
Ratandeep is now joining us on the phone line with the very latest. Ratandeep, so, various instances of firing being reported in vulnerable districts of Manipur, and significant that, Amit Shah is also scheduled to visit Manipur today for 3 days. What's actually the situation on the ground? Security ramped up, curfew extended, internet shut down?
That's right, but that has been the story of Manipur ever since the spell of violence started from the 3rd of May. And the army and the central forces were called in. The fact that security has been ramped up, and there have been in the last 3 to 4 days there have been combing operations. In fact, the state chief minister has come on record to say that at least 40 terrorists who were carrying automatic weapons like AK-47, like M16 rifles, and who were part of the mob and attacking civilians and attacking security forces. They have been gunned down in this in this operations which are taking place. But what is important here to note is that there have been flare-ups in the past couple of days. There have been new areas where villages have from the villages there are reports of arson. There are at least 5 people who have lost their life in the last 24 hours, according to official sources. This includes one Manipur police commando as well, who was shot in an encounter with one of the militant groups. Now, what is important here to note is that yesterday, even in the heart of the state capital, Imphal, angry mob actually vandalized the residence of a BJP MLA, K.H. Raghumani of Uripok constituency, Initially, the reports are that people went there to submit a memorandum, and there was an altercation. There are allegations that his son has fired from a licensed weapon, and after that, the mob vandalized the area. There have been arson in Imphal as well in the last 24 hours. In fact, despite curfew last night in several areas, including capital Imphal, people in thousands have come to the streets. Security forces had to use tear gas shells and also blank firing to disperse the crowd. So therefore, the overall situation remains very tense, although government says that they're trying their best to keep the situation under control. Army is trying its best to keep the situation under control. Assam Rifles is there,
right.
forces are there. But also what is important to note is that the itinerary of Union Home Minister Amit Shah has not been given out, so it is unclear when he will reach Imphal. Initially, in fact, the junior Home Minister Nityanand Rai, when he was in Imphal, he had said that on 29th, which is today, is going to come into Imphal and be there for at least 3 days. This will be the beginning of Centre's initiative to reach out to all the stakeholders. In fact, that process has already started. Remember, for 2 days, Army Chief Manoj Pandey was there, assessing the ground situation. So therefore, efforts are on, while political efforts are on to start dialogue between the communities and all the stakeholders to bring in peace. Also, operations are on to flush out militants who are, trying to use this situation, and using basically civilians and the mob as human shields to fire upon civilians and army. So, however, given the fact that people are defying curfew, so therefore the situation still remains tense in Manipur.
Right, Ratnadeep, thanks so much for that update. So, the centre's attempt to broker peace in the northeastern state, but Manipur remains on edge. And the other big story, India finally has a new parliament. The new parliament building was inaugurated by the Prime Minister yesterday in a grand ceremony. And he said that yesterday, the 28th of May, will be etched in history as India now has a new parliament. The Prime Minister inaugurated the new parliament building in the presence of BJP MPs, but in virtually no presence of the opposition, because 20 opposition parties decided to boycott the inauguration of the parliament, saying that it should be the constitutional head of the country, the president, and not the Prime Minister, who should be inaugurating the new parliament. It was a day of ceremonies with the Prime Minister beginning the day with a traditional puja and a multi-faith prayer, and then installing that historic scepter or the sacred Sengol next to the Speaker's chair, in a sense redefining the seat of the world's largest democracy.
आज 28 मई 2023 का ये दिन ऐसा ही शुभ अवसर है। देश आजादी के 75 वर्ष होने पर अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है। इस अमृत महोत्सव में भारत के लोगों ने अपने लोकतंत्र को संसद के इस नए भवन का उपहार दिया है। आज सुबह ही संसद भवन परिसर में सर्वपंथ प्रार्थना हुई है। मैं सभी देशवासियों को भारतीय लोकतंत्र के इस स्वर्णिम क्षण की बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। महान चोल साम्राज्य में सेंगोल को कर्तव्य पथ का, सेवा पथ का, राष्ट्र पथ का प्रतीक माना जाता था। राजा जी और आदिनम के संतों के मार्गदर्शन में यही सेंगोल सत्ता के हस्तांतरण का प्रतीक बना था। तमिलनाडु से विशेष तौर पर आए हुए आदीनम के संत आज सुबह संसद भवन में हमें आशीर्वाद देने उपस्थित हुए थे। मैं उन्हें पुनः श्रद्धापूर्वक नमन करता हूं। उनके ही मार्गदर्शन में लोकसभा में ये पवित्र सेंगोल स्थापित हुआ है।
With the historic Sengol in his hand, the Prime Minister unveiling the new seat of the world's largest democracy. The sacred scepter now stands next to the Speaker's chair, front and centre of the grand new Parliament inaugurated by the Prime Minister today. The look of the centre of India's power corridors redefined on this historic day. At the crack of dawn, the Prime Minister arrived at the new building for a traditional puja that began with Vedic chants and a multi-faith prayer. And then came the Shashtang Dandvat Pranam, the Prime Minister prostrating reverentially before the Sengol before the Adhanam saints handed it over. After the symbol of just rule placed in its designated position, the Parliament, sans the opposition, stood in unity for the national anthem. The real heroes of the day, however, were not the parliamentarians, but the Shramjeevis, or the workers who built the new Parliament in a record time of 3 years. Their felicitation by the Prime Minister, a fitting touch, as the new Parliament, in the words of PM Modi, is a reflection of 135 crore Indians and that of our ambitions and emotions.
हम भारतीयों का
मुक्त मातृभूमि को नवीन पान चाहिए, नवीन पर्व के लिए नवीन प्राण चाहिए.
But as the world's largest democracy embarks on a new journey, there was almost no representation from the opposition, which said it should have been the constitutional head of the country, the president, inaugurating the new parliament and not the prime minister.
पण राज्यसभेचे प्रमुख जे आहेत, चेअरमन आहेत, ते उपराष्ट्रपती आहेत. त्यांचं त्या ठिकाणी कुठं उपस्थिती यत्किंचितही दिसली नाही आणि त्यामुळं हा सगळाच कार्यक्रम, हा सगळा सोहळा असा मर्यादित घटकांच्या पुरताच होता का काय अशी शंका येणारी स्थिती आहे. की जे जुनं पार्लमेंट आहे, आम्हाला लोकांच्या कदाचित अनेक वर्ष असल्यामुळे एखाद्या गोष्टीचं तुमचं एक आस्था निर्माण होते.
For us as taxpayers, it's really not the building but the institution that matters. One hopes that our constitutional ideals remain intact in this new parliament. The hope is also that our parliamentarians shed some old habits and there are less disruptions and more legislative debate in the new parliament. In New Delhi with camera person Xavier Thomas, Vedant for NDTV. But as we celebrated the grand opening of the new parliament, just few kilometers away, India's top women wrestlers protesting at Jantar Mantar in Delhi since the 29th of April, demanding the arrest of Wrestling Federation Chief Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. They were dragged, pushed and detained for peacefully protesting and trying to march towards the new parliament. Now remember, the Delhi police released the top wrestlers only after 7 to 8 hours, and in fact, the Delhi police has also registered an FIR against the wrestlers for rioting, unlawful assembly, and obstructing police on duty. The case has been registered in the Delhi Police's Parliament Street police station. In fact, top Olympians, top faces from the world of sports as well as opposition leaders have tweeted condemning the action of the Delhi police, particularly because it happened on such a significant day for India's democracy. Sunil Shetty said that why does it have to come down to our wrestlers being dragged around without any consideration? This isn't the way to treat anyone. I really hope this whole situation is assessed the way it should be. In fact, Neeraj Chopra, a top Olympian, also tweeted in support of the wrestlers, and the wrestlers have now said that they will not go home without getting justice. In fact, yesterday night, the wrestlers had gone back to Jantar Mantar, but they were not allowed by the Delhi police to carry out their protests.
कोई मतलब ही नहीं है भाई, जब तक न्याय नहीं मिल जाता। अभी जाके 10 घंटे से जो हमारे साथी हैं सब अलग अलग डिटेन कर रखे थे, गिरफ्तार कर रखे थे, तो अभी सबसे लास्ट में मेरे को ही छोड़ा गया है। सभी 7 बजे 7:30 बजे छोड़ दिए थे, लेकिन सबसे लास्ट में मेरे को ही छोड़ा गया है। एक बार जाके मिलके बैठ के बात करेंगे, उसके बाद डिसाइड करेंगे।
Tanishq is joining us on the phone line. Tanishq, you've been tracking this story since the very beginning, and we all know that this, the wrestlers' protest has, in a sense, been going on since January, because this is the second leg of their protest. So, what is their plan going ahead? I mean, they've faced enough humiliation on the streets of the national capital.
Yes, Vedant, I can't tell for sure that what is their plan going to be in the coming time. But one thing is for sure that I don't believe that they are going to step down their protest. They are going to stop their protest because they have been relentlessly protesting for more than a month now. After they restarted their protest. Now, if you remember, there was also a scuffle sometime back between the Delhi police and the wrestlers. And they didn't back down then also. They are going to continue the protest demanding the arrest of Brij Bhushan Singh. While on the other hand, police says that the investigation is underway. They have presented their statements also. And relevant statements have been recorded. Statements of all the victims have been, alleged victims have been recorded by the police. So yeah, they are going to continue the protest. That's what I believe. But as of last night, they were stopped from entering Jantar Mantar. They were stopped from entering Jantar Mantar after 7 hours they were detained for almost more than 7 hours, but they were stopped for entering Jantar Mantar, where they have been continuing their protest for more than 30 days now. What remains also, there is a lot of political furore over the whole drama that unfolded yesterday while the parliament was being inaugurated. We know a lot of opposition parties boycotted the parliament inauguration, and at the same time this happened just 2 kilometers away from the parliament. So a lot of political parties, political leaders again came out in support, including Mamata Banerjee, Sitaram Yechuri, Rahul Gandhi. All of them came out in support of the wrestlers. Now, what remains to be seen that whether or not how will they continue their protest? Because police has denied them permission to enter Jantar Mantar. Over to you, Vedant.
Right, and Tanishq, remember, Jantar Mantar is really the designated spot for peaceful protests in the national capital. So, questions being raised as to why India's top wrestlers are not being allowed to enter that spot for peaceful protests. Thanks, Tanishq, for that update. Well, time for a short break. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. The big political headline this morning. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge is expected to meet both Sachin Pilot and Ashok Gehlot. Now remember, this comes after there has been now a virtually public standoff between Sachin Pilot and Ashok Gehlot. Remember, Sachin Pilot had launched that fast, and after that he had also undertaken that yatra, in a sense to say that corruption allegations against Vasudha Raje Scindia were not probed effectively by the erstwhile, by the Gehlot government, in fact, and that's what Sachin Pilot has been saying. And he said that he will take out the yatra in Rajasthan against the BJP government, the erstwhile BJP government, and the inaction by the Gehlot government. Remember, Ashok Gehlot, meanwhile, has been focusing on his Mehengai Rahat campaign in Rajasthan. It's a crucial year for the Congress, particularly in Rajasthan, in poll-bound Rajasthan. Rajasthan is one of the few states going to elections this year, along with Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Telangana. So the Congress's bid to keep its flock together in Rajasthan ahead of the crucial polls. We'll slip into a short break. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Moving now to the big international headline this morning. Turkey's Erdogan has declared victory in the polls that pose the biggest challenge to his 20 years rule. Erdogan prevailed by winning more than 52% of the vote in Sunday's presidential runoff, which came 2 weeks after he fell short of scoring an outright victory in the first round. But a majority of Turkish voters in the second round chose him over his challenger, showing their support for a man who they see as a strong and proven leader.
Bugün kimse kaybetmemiştir. 85 milyonun tamamı kazanmıştır. Milletimizin bize verdiği sorumluluğun gereği olarak kimseye kırgın, küskün, kızgın, öfkeli değiliz. Artık seçim dönemine dair tüm tartışmaları ve çekişmeleri bir kenara bırakarak milli hedeflerimiz, milli hayallerimiz etrafında birleşme, bütünleşme vaktidir.
And well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Erdogan on his re-election as the president of Turkey, and he also said that he is confident that the bilateral ties between India and Turkey will only grow in the coming years. Remember, India's Operation Dost in the aftermath of the earthquake in Turkey was something that was talked about globally. All the help and relief that India had provided to Turkey in the devastation that the earthquake had unleashed in Turkey. The other big headline, Biden says that the final US debt ceiling deal ready to move to the Congress for vote with days to spare before a potential first ever government default. President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reached the final agreement on Sunday, a deal to raise the nation's debt ceiling while trying to ensure enough Republican and Democratic votes, to pass the measure in the coming week. The final agreement between the leaders was confirmed by a person familiar with the situation and granted anonymity to discuss it.
The only way forward was a bipartisan agreement. That agreement now goes to the United States House and to the Senate. I strongly urge both chambers to pass that agreement. Let's keep moving forward on meeting our obligations and building the strongest economy in the history of the world. And it's happened more than once. It will probably happen again, but it's not going to happen at least for another 2 years here. And I think beyond that it won't.
And well, a stunning image of a heart-shaped glacier on Pluto. NASA has shared this fascinating image on Instagram taken by its New Horizons spacecraft, showing a heart-shaped glacier on Pluto's surface. The space agency routinely captures stunning images of our universe, leaving space lovers mesmerized. Yesterday, NASA shared this image taken by the New Horizons spacecraft. Time for a short break now. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Well, one of the big highlights of the new parliament is the historic sacred Sengol, or the scepter, which has been placed now next to the Speaker's chair in Lok Sabha. And it was Sachinanand Joshi, the member secretary and executive and academic head of the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, who had located the Sengol and also talked about its historical significance. He says that the Sengol has now found its relevant place in the parliament and that it's a symbol and a hallmark of democracy. Here's a chat with him by my colleague Vasudha Venugopal.
So today is an important day for the country. The new parliament is in place and the historic scepter or the Sengol has found a place in the new parliament. To talk about the Sengol and the new parliament, we have with us Dr. Sachidanand Joshi. He's member secretary of the IGNCA. IGNCA has been instrumental in pivoting the research that went into the Sengol, and Dr. Joshi has also played a very important role in ensuring that the new parliament has images from Indian philosophy, Indian traditions and represents Indian ethos. Thank you very much for speaking to us, sir. I will start with that one question that's been on a lot of minds. What does a Sengol symbolize for a democracy like India? Because scepter has always been associated with kings. So does this have a place in India's democracy, or does it just have symbolic value?
No, it definitely has place in India's democracy. It denotes rule of law and righteousness. If you see the Nandi is the symbol of truth, justice, good governance and service to the people. So that everything attributes to democracy. So when you call it scepter, we are going to object, because scepter is definitely related to monarchy, because it deals with power, whereas Sengol deals with authority to rule, authority to govern. But authority, whose authority? Authority given by public, by and large. And who is going to sort of perform that authority? So there are adhinams who on behalf of public, they give this authority to someone to rule, but rule of law, righteousness, service to the people. So that is of course the hallmark of democracy is. And that is why we think that the parliament is the right place for the Sengol, because it reminds everyone that for whom you are working for the people of India. To whom you are responsible to, you are responsible to the people of India. So you always should have that thing in back of your mind. So if that thing is at your back of the mind, definitely you will whatever you will decide with more logic and more justifications.
Sir, another interesting aspect of your work on the interiors of the parliament is the fact that you've managed to get I think the instruments of different gifted artists like Ustad Bismillah Khan, Pandit Ravi Shankar. How did you manage to do that, and where would these instruments be kept?
Actually, what happened, it was a process of creating the music gallery, and in that music gallery we wanted to show some instruments, but later on we were communicated that it is the desire of the Honorable Prime Minister that we should have something which is unique. I mean, sitar is just sitar, but what makes it special if it belongs to Pandit Ravi Shankar? So when this was communicated to us, it was a big challenge. So God has been kind enough. We approached to family members or to the maestros themselves, and they have been very kind, very kind. Let me place it on record that they have been very kind to sort of lend their own instruments. Like for instance, the son of Ustad Bismillah Khan was not in Varanasi when we contacted him. He was somewhere else, but he drove down to Varanasi 50-60 kilometers to hand it over to our people in Varanasi, and he thanked the Honorable Prime Minister for thinking about this gallery. Ustad Amzad Ali Khan, I mean, he called me and said I would give him, please come and take it. Hari Prasad Chaurasia ji, my colleague went to Mumbai, he was ready, he said come on, take it today, tomorrow I am going somewhere else. Family of Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, or daughter of Pandit Ravi Shankar, she is in US, but she managed to give the permission and all the MOUs done, and we could take the sitar from Pandit Ravi Shankar. And Ramani's flute from South, Koraikudi Mani, who recently is no more, unfortunately, his family members, you see, I mean, we contacted him, they were so generous, you see, I mean, they were in a moment of sorrow and grief. Despite of all that, they said, no, we'll give it to you. So so the legends, I mean, it's all God's grace that everything. Just Pandit Suresh Talwalkar's tabla is there. He asked his disciple in Delhi to hand it over, so he personally came and gave it to us. So many things. They are all heart-touching stories.
Dr. Joshi, I was looking at some of the icons and they're beautiful. You know, you have the mandaps there and you have the foyers and you have the dwarpals. But tell us, how consultative was this process? I'm given to understand that you spoke to states about it. You got a lot of views and feedback. Tell us, who were the people that you consulted?
You see, it's a team, and it's not a small team. It's a big team. So many members. If I name a few, it'll be injustice to those whom I would be missing. But of course I would like to place it on record that the Ministry of Culture has been kind enough to have trust on IGNC's ability, and then they gave this entire task to us, and they believed on what we are doing. Not only that, the Secretary Culture, Shri Govind Mohan himself, I mean, he used to sit here for hours together to discuss and to deliberate and to guide us. I mean, this is a team effort. I'm only naming him because, I mean, this is the kind of leadership which you want from someone like the Secretary of Culture, and all the experts, eminent experts, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushans. We have contacted them, and they willfully came and devoted so much of time. You will not believe how many hours we have been discussing and researching, and everyone sort of thought that this project belongs to him or her. So that kind of a familiarity, that kind of affection with the project was there. And then we tried to sort of consolidate our research. Then we also thought that how can we make it holistic? How can we make it representative? How can we make it inclusive? So then we started selecting the artifacts and artists. And let me tell you that most of the artists who have created their artworks are not very famous big names. They all are grassroots level artists, and they have creativity of highest level, but they are not much known artists. But we reposed faith on them, and I am happy to share that they delivered. Not only delivered, they delivered on time. They delivered with utmost perfections, and they were ready to listen to whatever changes we were sort of telling them. So that is the beauty of the whole concept.
So Dr. Joshi, from the contribution of women to the country in ancient India to ancient Indian sports, I think you have covered a lot of aspects from India's past. Tell us some of the most interesting and your favorite items that are being reflected in the Parliament today.
And there is one image of Gargi. Since you are talking about women, Gargi, 4,000, 5,000 years back, and she is a housewife. But in Janak's Sabha, she argues with Yakivalk, who is supposed to be the greatest scholar of that time, and virtually defeats him. This thing tells you two important things. All talks related to women empowerment are not new for us. Women were empowered at that time, and all talks related to a liberalized society where a lady was allowed to argue in front of everyone, and she virtually wins. So that scene we have depicted in one of the mandaps as a huge brass mural. I think many of us may not be knowing the story of Gargi, especially the younger generation. But if they go and see that, it will be an eye-opener for them, and they will have a different perspective of the entire narrative related to Bharat.
So Dr. Joshi, last question. Is it right to say that the Sengol was neglected for years?
It was neglected, it was put aside. Maybe its importance was not properly understood. I would say its importance was not properly understood. That is why this incident happened, and it was not properly recorded. It should have been there somewhere on the records. But then why it was neglected, I don't know. It was so visionary of our Prime Minister to think about that and to place it in the Parliament, just to show that this belongs to the identity of India, the lineage, the historicity of India, the traditions which we belong to. So it is really a unique concept, I must tell you. I mean, if you go into the historicity, try to find out documents, reasons, logics, there may be arguments and counter-arguments. But there is no denial of the fact that Sengol belongs to Indian tradition from years together, 1,000 years, Cholas, and it has continued. So there is no harm in sort of keeping that as a symbol of righteousness and rule of law.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. So that was Dr. Joshi, Member Secretary, IGNCA, who was telling us that the Sengol and not the scepter defines the rule of law and rule of justice, and it has finally found a rightful place in Indian democracy. With camera person Xavier, this is Vasudha Venugopal for NDTV.